All right, so let's try reflections for the second venture of Circle of Hands. We gave a on the moment reflections, which I think was pretty thorough at the end of our last session. But still, there's always more to go in depth. So let's try and do that. I took some notes to help me organize my thoughts. So let's talk about the setting and the tone. This was very interesting. It was a kudos to Anthony for changing up the setting. When I read the description of the crescent land that Ron gave and his reason for like not labeling the different geographic areas of the crescent land, it sounded very interesting, and it really, the map looks great without any place names or anything. But more than place names, there is a certain evenness, right? It's a certain homogeneity to the culture of the crescent land, where it led me to be a bit concerned making the setting for the ventures different, right? Unlike, say, maybe, say if this had been medieval Europe, or had it been any fantasy setting, different lands imply different cultures. At least that shakes up the setting a little bit. Here in the Crescent Land, I suppose if we go to Spur, it's going to be radically different. But there is a certain evenness, I guess, again, homogeneity to Rolke, Famberge, and Temerian, which had me concerned. But, it worked out fine. The venture again took place in Rolke, but Anthony's use of it took completely different. First it was the coast, and now it's the mountains, right? A frigid mountain pass, different season, different location. That from the start set up a different feel to the session. Add to that the tone. I think Anthony was very successful conveying the tone, again, by combination of the weather, the remote location, the stark contrast between what the different social classes were going through, with the gentry and the upper echelon of the freemen locked up in the keep, and the rest of the social classes of the village left in the snow to weather this harsh winter. So that was a good start for the setting and the tone. There was a lot of feeling of helplessness and of loss of hope. Right, there was no way to get out of this difficult situation. It sort of mirrors the beginning of the venture, when you're using one die to solve everything, and you're hoping for that, Hail Mary pass to maybe get that 12 result on the die, and hoping that you have enough of a stat to get you there. Because otherwise it's futile. You're not going to do it. You're going to have to go through failure before you can get to success. So that was a nice way in which Anthony conveyed the tone with the use of the setting. I thought it was pretty cool. Let's get back to that tone later. Let's talk about the time compression. The big setback, I think, for the whole evening was the fact that we had a very strict, I got to be out of here by this time, so we're going to be done. And not only that, but it was a fairly tight time constraint. It was 2 hours, I believe. I can't remember anymore how long the first session was, but it felt like hours and hours, and we just kept going. This one had a time constraint. I think that had us a little bit nervous. At least it had me a little bit nervous. So I had that on the back of my mind. Add to that the use of the hard scene framing that Anthony went for, because he wanted this degree of control of the pacing, which was really necessary, right, given the strict time constraint, because otherwise we weren't going to get anything done. But it was a little bit of a shift in the feel of the session. Again, we're going from this letting the scene play out until it's fully played out to a tight, as soon as there's a lull in the action, or as soon as some actions were taken, harsh cut and go to the other guy or go to the next scene. Again, it was necessary. It felt, I don't know, a little bit off. We and this is not blaming Anthony. This is blaming everybody, us. And I'm not used to that type of scene frame, in which I recognize it has, it's vital for the whole pacing thing. I guess we usually tend to go with much softer, more organic, let it play out until it's almost boring, and then you cut and go to the next guy. So it felt a little harsh, right? Like a little staccato, like a little abrupt changing. It's no big deal, but it was felt. So it was a little bit of a change from our first session. So that took a little bit of getting used to. Fortunately, it did not ruin the immersion, right? And we'll get back to immersion soon. The other thing I wanted to mention was the passage of time. Anthony took advantage of this hard scene framing and this control of the sessions to skip forward in time. We had talked about this before, how the first session went about. It was basically one night in this village, or 2 nights or something like that, and that was the whole venture. And Ron talks about the passage of time and the hard scene framing certainly allowed for narration of time going by and allowed for the number of people in the village to start dying off. So, there was that. But again, this might be the hard scene framing, and this might be a style of gaming that I'm not used to, but the movement of time felt a little bit artificial. Like, had we not gone with this jump forward in time style, I would have probably done more things in a particular scene, moving the action along. And had it not been managed as, again, the tight scene framing with the time skips, it would surely have gone back to the let's resolve this whole issue like in a day or two. So that was interesting, what he did. So I'm not 100% certain how I feel about the whole passage of time issue. It worked. It worked, I guess, for purposes of having the population dying and, changing the conditions of the village as we spent time in it. How real it felt, I don't know. I don't know if maybe we don't have the technique down yet for that. And again, I understand. I think that's the only way to do it. I'm not 100% sure there's a different way to do that. So maybe it's just a matter of getting used to the fact that you have to allow for passage of time. So anyway, that was one thing. So let's talk about character selection. So when we got the setting, which was very interesting, I immediately thought of the outdoorsman. And that's why I went with Otto. I wanted to give the opportunity to Ivan to maybe pick one of my characters, but he was also interested in Ingolf, which would have been my second choice. I was almost, I kind of wanted to see how Ingolf would handle it too, from the point of view of the peasant. Maybe it's just because they're the characters we designed. So, I don't know, maybe it would have been interesting to repeat a character or try each other's character instead of going for our own, the one we designed. So, I don't know if I'm too happy with that. I am happy that I played Otto. I've been wanting to play Otto for a while since I wrote him. So, but again, are we missing something with the just by playing the characters that we made again? So I don't know. We'll see what happens next session with the new GM. So that'll be interesting. See how the dynamic changes and how the introduction of Anthony's characters into the pool will affect character selection. That's something we need to discuss. Like, if he plays Kai, can I play Anselm? I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. Okay, so once I had the character, my concern after we played, I mean, at the moment of play, I'm in the character. I'm trying my best to see the world through the eyes of this guy, right? I know that I have to push the outdoorsman angle, that I have to do the hunting, that's what my guy does. The main prompt as regards like his stats and his traits and everything is blunt. So, Ivan remarked on the whole scene where Otto talks to the kid who's had to sacrifice his dog. And I did that completely on purpose. Like, this guy will just speak his mind. He doesn't mean ill, right? He's not trying to purposely inflict pain on the kid. He's trying to cheer the kid up, but he's blunt. So he's going to be, he's going to say the truth, right? So, I know it's hard having to kill your dog, but, thank you for doing it because you're going to survive and there'll be other dogs and you've done the best for the village and that's great. And so that was on purpose. That was not me. I don't know. I wasn't trying to be funny. It probably came out as funny, but I did it on purpose. I wanted to be blunt. I wanted to be Otto. I still wonder, like I said in the reflections at the end of the video, I mean, is this guy different enough from Hadrick? Did you feel the difference? Because, Ron has said, he doesn't want thespianism. I think there is the way I play, I try to speak, in the dialect of the times. I don't like the anachronistic talk. Throws me off. That's a personal preference. So I'm not trying to do the thespianism, I try not to play it over the top, right? I try to play it as if I were an actor in a real movie, right? Not that I'm anywhere near a real actor or anything. I hadn't had a single day of training. I don't even know what that means. I just try to imitate the patterns of speech that I read and the books that I read and the movies that I watch. And so I try to bring a degree of authenticity to, in the words that the characters would use, that I think they would use. But, I do it sincerely. I try to do it sincerely, not as an affectation, not as an over-the-top thing. I think if I try to do it sincerely, then it probably doesn't come across as false. I don't know if that translates at all into what you actually see in the session, but it's in the moment when I'm doing it, I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm not trying to do William Shatner, right? Overacting. I hope I don't do it, but that's not the intention. And at the end of the day, again, I as much as I try to see this through the eyes of the character, it's still me playing it, right? It's still my sensibilities. It's still some personal things go through, right? Some of my reactions to what's going on. As much as I try to play the character, I wonder, did I really do a different job? Because at the core of both the characters that I portrayed, there is a personal feeling of this is wrong. I have to do something about this. I can't just sit by and not have it be my problem, right? So that's why Otto swears an oath, right? as far as the oath mechanism goes, the whole concept of the oath, it's really interesting. We talked about there being bleakness and hopelessness, and the real way out that these guys have as members of the circle to escape the hopelessness and helplessness is through magic, I think. It's the real equalizing factor, that and the fact that they can fight. But when they're faced with like a keep full of noblemen, you're outmatched, you're outclassed. When you're faced with a bunch of ghouls, which is a group, as the game defines it, there's not much a normal man can do, even if they're really well trained at fighting. And the equalizer there is magic. Now that could either be direct spell casting, or it could be the taking of the oaths. Small aside note, I did make a mistake when I cast the ward spell during the night. I did say at the beginning that I was going to take the ward spell, and then Ivan said, no, my guy has it too. So I said, okay, I'll go back to Beast 1 summoning, and I forgot as soon as we started to play. Even though I wrote it down, I was, in the moment I just started saying, well, this is a good time to cast that ward spell. In the end, it doesn't really matter, but I always like to point out my own, that's a mistake, right? That's a player error. So I try to point those out to myself in these videos and try to learn from that and not do it again. So I'll be trying to pay attention to that in the future. Anyway, back to the oath. I really like the mechanic. I like that it immediately ramped up because I rolled 2 6s on the Amborian oath die, and that immediately put me over to a mark and gift. I didn't reveal the gift because I looked at them and I said the only way we get out of this mess, thinking about the keep, was the shape change into the silver dragon. I suppose I could have looked at the Urbaja versions, but I knew that the silver dragon was there, and that seemed to me to be a good means of a good leveling of the playing field, right? After the game ended, I was like, that's the second time I've gone for Amborian in preference to Urbaja, with me casting the Wrath spell in the previous venture. But then I started to think, and in the previous venture, that's the only way I could think of to get rid of the undead. So those were, I could have cast a Black Zone spell, right? But it wouldn't have destroyed the undead, and that's what I wanted to do. So the only way to do that was to cast the Amborian Wrath spell, which I did with Black Hadric back then. And this time, the reason I went for Amborian, it's not that my spells reflected that. It's that the oath reflected protection, right? I swore the oath, I will not let these people starve. So that's a form of protection. That can't be Urbaja, right? So this puts me again playing a character slanted slightly toward Urbaja. And this one went all the way, right? Because they skipped over it, got a gift, got a mark. And because I did not resolve the oath by the end of the session, that means this guy has 2 marks. Ron mentions in the game that this turns, there's a degree of, let's see if I can find his wording, a degree of otherworldliness. It marks and the increasing vulnerability to magical stones indicate a creeping dehumanizing effect, is how Ron puts it, no matter what color it is. So this guy's becoming less human. And again, as we found out last time, the circles, the Amborian circles, don't reset. You keep those. So you also keep the marks and you keep the gifts, right? So I used a gift. I don't think I can do it again. I have to check that. I think once you use it, I don't know if it's gone or if it stays. I think it might stay. It might be something I can do maybe once per session. I'll have to check that, because the Amborian circles bar was reset to 0, right? but I still have those marks. So the next time we play this guy, he's dehumanized, right? So it's going to be aloof. He's going to be more judgmental, it would seem to me. And it's going to be interesting to see if is any way to balance that. Ron indicates that the key to that might be favoring Urbaja now and getting, those black points. I don't know if that does the trick because one doesn't cancel out the other. But anyway, now we have these two interesting characters in the form of Falk Wolfram from the first venture and now Otto from the second venture, who already are marked. And this is only our second session. So it's going to be interesting to see how those characters get portrayed, how that changes their humanity, and how this roller coaster, right, goes, because now it's at least 2 marks, right? So next thing he does, that's the 3rd mark right there. So it'll be interesting to see if we can play the game not to, to prevent him from going full-blown 3 marks, more gifts. It'll be interesting to see if we can stop him from doing that, but it'd also be interesting if we go full bore and what happens now, or if he goes full Black Oath and what happens now. So in any case, it's going to be an interesting ride, I think. So I mentioned in the preliminary review we gave that I liked the way that despite the time jumps which felt a little bit jarring, the flow of how I came to the decisions that I came as the character felt organic, which is really important to me because I don't want to feel it be artificial, right? I knew going to the keep was something we had to do, right? But I didn't want to rush it because, again, I mentioned, had we been playing this the same way we had been playing before, my character would have been at the keep by nightfall on the first day, right? Asking, why aren't you helping? These people are dying. You need more. You need to share your stores or whatever it is. But I didn't do that on purpose because it didn't feel like the character had been pushed to the edge of, as a freeman, going to the gentry on behalf of the peasants asking for food. It didn't feel desperate enough, or at least, I felt kind of wanting it to ramp up, right? To go to the point where I felt it's like this is hopeless. We need to act, and I got that. I feel I got that. The scenes were horrific with the first, the finding the homestead where the father had killed the family. That was emotional. That was tough. But the clincher was the scene with the little girl. And we come to what's probably the final point, right? Is this game fun? Discussion, which I've had in private with Anthony and Ivan, referring to the time when they played the Veil, and other games of that ilk, right? Are those games really fun? And the answer to me is no. To me, fun is the pew pew Star Wars, running back and forth and action and killing monsters and sanitized violence and stuff like that, right? Like your regular D&D or your regular Star Wars or your regular, espionage game, Top Secret, Star Frontiers, stuff like that. The old school stuff that I like to play. And, some of those I haven't played in a while, but I feel the tone, right? It's lighter, it's fun, it's enjoy the action and maybe solve a little mystery and maybe, shoot some people, right? But they're not real people. It's very sanitized. This, on the other hand, is the in-your-face. These are real people, and you are, there's people dying here. This is what, I personally refer to as the emotional play. It's not fun, but there is an emotional catharsis or emotional reward to playing these games. And that's pretty much consistent with what I've heard from, the little reading I've done on the indie community and the lot of podcasts I've heard from the indie community. Like, I've heard the entire catalog of the Gauntlet podcast, and they're really heavy into these indie type of games. And I know labels are bad. I know they are. I only use that label to differentiate these new games, which to me seem to be more focused on the emotional experience as opposed to the quote-unquote fun, action, sanitized, happy, we had fun, guys, we killed some monsters, yay, type of gaming, which is what I usually do. Now, it's your game. You can play the traditional games very emotionally too, if you wish. And I suppose you could play the new games very light and, hey, we shot some people, bang, bang. I suppose you could do that too. And I don't want to get into that in this video. But I just mentioned it because I have a lack of experience with these emotional games, right? And it's interesting. They're not fun, but they are emotional. The scene with the father and the dead family, and that wasn't fun. It was emotional. The scene with the little girl wasn't fun, but it was emotional. I mentioned, in the first venture that we played, I crossed a line for myself, and I felt really bad afterwards. In this session, I didn't cross the lines, but I hit my head against the wall of the line, if you catch my meaning. Because we said, okay, we're not going to cross any more lines, but I hit that line. I at least bounced off of it. The interaction with the family was great for setting the tone again, and it was a good emotional thing. The interaction with the little girl, here's my train of thought. Here's what I was trying to accomplish. I thought, I don't want to traumatize the girl any further by grabbing onto her and pulling her out of the little place where she was seeking shelter, which I could have done. So I figured I'll leave her my cloak and I'll go follow the footprints of where she came from, hoping to get her family to come back and look for her. That was my original intent. I like that, I was already so concerned for this, that this is the point, when I started doing the exposure checks and suffering from having left that cloak, I felt as the character the frustration, the futility, the hopelessness, and the unfairness of it all, and that's what prompted me to take the oath. So again, I'm really happy that it just flowed organically. I took the oath organically because that's what I felt I had to do, and that's what I wanted to do because I was frustrated and angry as a character and a little bit as the player myself. But I recognize that those feelings are not from the game, from us playing the game. It's from being the character in that situation, right? So it's an in-character feeling. And then when I got to the homestead and I noticed the destruction, I was really concerned about what's going on, what's causing this. I thought it might be demons. I said it doesn't look like it might be some sort of... I didn't think of ghouls. I thought of Draugr, but then I thought, it doesn't look like undead, right? They would still be around. It felt different, and I honestly didn't think of the ghouls, which is good. Which is great. Because it came as a surprise when they finally showed up. And my train of thought was, I just went through this cold wasteland. Getting here, now I have to go back and get the little girl. And my train of thought was, I'll just make a fire and warm myself up and get myself ready to undertake the perilous journey back. And Anthony, as the GM, took the opportunity to say, okay, you sleep through the night. Right? And he moved time forward, which resulted in the death of the little girl. This is what Bob Ross, if you ever watched The Joy of Painting, would call a happy little accident, right? It's more of a horrible little accident, but it felt real, right? Guy is exhausted, builds a fire, lays down to get a little nap. I'll just close my eyes for a few minutes, and he wakes up and the night has completely passed. The little girl is dead, right? That felt super real. That pushed the tone again harder this quick, and it pushed the emotion even further. It's like, wow, what did I just do? And then the regret sets in of, I should have just grabbed a girl, regardless of whether she was screaming or not. I should have just grabbed her and wrapped us both in our cloak and taken her back to the village where I could leave her with somebody before I went exploring. Or I could have taken her with me and then followed her tracks back to her homestead, even if she were screaming and kicking and whatever. And wow, then I was put in this situation of, this is what just happened, and I had just taken the oath. So that just strengthened my resolve even further, even harder, right? So I think this is the drama that Ron calls out when he uses the word quote unquote drama. And you know, even in the videos, when I've seen Ron say the word drama, this is what he means. I think he means the real emotional thing, the real emotion behind the play. He doesn't mean drama like, you know, like faking the drama. I think he means it like feeling the classical definition of drama, right, where your emotions are played. So I think we got that. So I think that's a huge success. It didn't feel bad like last time because I crossed the line, right? It felt good because I skirted the line, and this is what Ron says in the book, right? You want to be on that edge, and I will not abandon you. I will be with you, and we will walk the edge together. And I think this is the key to the game, or at least I think that's my understanding of what Ron's intention for the game is. And I'm speaking for Ron, and I shouldn't do that. But on the other hand, this is what I understood from reading the text that he was trying to communicate to me. So I could be wrong about it, but I think that's the heart of the game. And that is why once the decision is made and my character goes back and rallies the town folk, and I even said to Anthony, I don't care if they go with me. If they go, that's fine, but I don't even care because I'm going over there and I'm going to make stuff happen in that keep one way or the other, or die trying. Right? And that's why the action is okay to end it there, right? And we could go to epilogues and we could talk about that, but I don't think it's worth it. Even like Ron says, you know, just stop it because it's not really, it's fine. You know, you could play out the final scene, but the moment of the highest tension, the real climax, is in the taking of the decision. Once the decision has been reached, it's denouement after there, right? It's just resolution. So anyway, wow, this video has even gone even longer than the first one. So I hope somebody is still listening, and I'm going to end it now. That's everything else is resolution after this. So thank you for watching and for sticking with it. And yeah, looking forward to everybody else's reaction. Thank you.